I had one crumpled $20 bill to feed my 3 sons on Christmas Eve, and when 8 Hell's Angels walked into that diner, I thought our nightmare was about to get worse. I had no idea the white-bearded biker staring at us was about to change everything. Before we get into this Christmas miracle, where are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments right now. I want to know where all the good-hearted people are tuning in from tonight. And if you believe that real kindness still exists in this world, hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get into the story. The $20 bill was crumpled, soft from being folded and unfolded too many times. Lana smoothed it flat on the sticky diner table, her fingers trembling in the fluorescent light of Betty's all-night diner. Outside, snow fell soft and silent over the empty streets of Burns, Oregon. Christmas Eve, the kind of night when families were supposed to be warm and safe and full. Her boys weren't full. They hadn't been full in 3 days. Devin, the oldest at 8, sat pressed against the window, his breath fogging the glass as he stared at the neon Santa that blinked on and off across the street. Isaiah, 6, picked at a crack in the red vinyl booth seat. And Jamie, her baby at 4, had his head on the table, too tired to even complain about being hungry anymore. "Mom," Devin whispered, not looking away from the window. "Can we get the spaghetti?" Lana's throat tightened. The spaghetti was $8.99. With tax, maybe $9.50. She'd already done the math 17 times in her head. 1 plate, 3 forks, split 3 ways. She'd tell them she wasn't hungry. "Yeah, baby," she managed. "We can get the spaghetti." The waitress, name tag said Dolores, face said she'd seen too much, approached with a pot of coffee that smelled like burnt hope. "Ready to order, hon?" Before Lana could answer, the diner door exploded open. Not violently, but the cold wind that rushed in felt like a fist. And with it came a sound that made every head in the diner turn. Motorcycles. The rumble of Harleys pulling into the gravel lot shook the windows. 1, 2, 5, 8. Lana counted them by sound, her pulse hammering in her ears. The engines cut, leaving a silence that felt worse than the noise. Then boots, heavy on pavement, crunching snow. The door opened again, and they walked in like something out of a nightmare. Hell's Angels, 8 of them. Leather cuts covered in patches that told stories Lana didn't want to read. Chains, tattoos crawling up necks and knuckles. Beards thick with road dust and cigarette smoke. The lead biker stood 6'4", easy. White beard down to his chest. Eyes like flint. A patch over his heart read Matthias, and below it, Road Captain. The diner went silent. Forks stopped moving. Conversations died mid-sentence. Lana felt Devin stiffen beside her. She reached for his hand under the table, squeezed it. Asterisk, don't look at them. Don't make eye contact. Be invisible. Asterisk. But Jamie, her baby, Jamie, who didn't understand danger yet, turned in his seat and stared. "Mama," he said too loud, pointing. "Why does that man have a skull on his jacket?" Lana's blood turned to ice. And across the diner, Matthias's eyes locked directly onto her. Lana's voice barely made it past her throat. "1 plate of spaghetti, please." Dolores, the waitress, didn't even blink. She'd seen this before. Single mom. 3 kids. 1 meal. She just nodded and walked away, her orthopedic shoes squeaking on the linoleum. The Hells Angels had taken the big corner booth. 8 men who looked like they'd crawled out of an outlaw ballad. Their presence sucked the oxygen from the room. Even the jukebox in the corner seemed to play quieter, like it was afraid to offend them. Lana kept her head down, hands folded in her lap, counting her breaths. They'll eat and leave. Just stay quiet. Stay invisible. The spaghetti arrived 10 minutes later. One white plate, red sauce, maybe 2 cups of pasta total. The garlic bread on the side was so thin you could see through it. Devin looked at it, then at his brothers, then at his mother. "It's okay," Lana whispered, pulling 3 smaller plates from the stack at the end of the table. "We're going to share. It'll be enough." She divided it with surgical precision, 1 forkful at a time, making sure each portion was exactly equal. Not a single noodle more for one child than another. Isaiah got the slightly bigger piece of garlic bread. Jamie got 2 extra mushrooms. Devin got nothing extra because he was the oldest and he'd understand. Her hand shook as she slid the plates across the table. "Eat slow," she said softly. "Make it last." Devin picked up his fork. "Aren't you eating, Mom?" "I ate earlier," she lied. Across the diner, Matthias Stone hadn't touched his coffee. He was staring at the booth by the window, at the woman with the hollow cheeks and the exhausted eyes, at the 3 boys who were eating like it was a religious experience, slow, savoring every bite, not wasting a single crumb, at the way she divided that plate. Something cold and sharp twisted in his chest. Kansas City, 1963, winter. He saw it again, clear as a photograph. His mother, 23 years old and already beaten down by life, sitting in a diner just like this one. Him and his 2 brothers, 7, 5, and 3, staring at 1 plate of hash browns, watching her divide it, 1 potato at a time, making it fair, telling them to eat slow, lying about having already eaten. Matthias's jaw clenched. His knuckles went white around the coffee cup. "Boss!" The biker next to him, a younger guy named Crow, leaned over. "You good?" Matthias didn't answer. He was watching the little one, Jamie, push a mushroom back onto his brother's plate when he thought their mother wasn't looking. The kind of sacrifice you only learn when you've known hunger. Matthias knew that sacrifice. He'd lived it. He'd sworn on his father's grave that if he ever made it out, if he ever had the power to change it for someone else, he would. And now, 50 years later, in a diner that smelled like grease and desperation, that promise came due. He stood up. The movement was slow, deliberate. 6'4" of muscle and leather rising from the booth. Every eye in the diner turned to him. Lana's head snapped up. Fear flooded her face. Matthias locked eyes with Dolores the waitress and started walking. Matthias's boots hit the linoleum with the weight of a verdict. Every step toward the counter felt like it took an hour. The other diners watched like they were witnessing a car accident in slow motion. At the booth by the window, Lana had gone pale, her arm instinctively wrapping around Jamie. But Matthias didn't walk to her table. He walked to Dolores. The waitress was pouring coffee for a trucker when Matthias appeared beside her, close enough that she jumped, nearly spilling the pot. Her hand went to her chest. "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, need you to do something for me," Matthias said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. He pulled a worn leather wallet from his cut, extracted 3 20s, and pressed them into her palm. Dolores stared at the money, then at him. "What's this for?" "Table by the window." The woman with the 3 boys. Matthias glanced over his shoulder. Lana was trying to make herself smaller, her back pressed against the booth. "Their bills paid, and I want you to bring them a full Christmas dinner. Turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, stuffing, green beans, rolls. Whatever you got back there that's hot and real. And pie. 3 slices for the kids." Dolores's eyes widened. "That's going to be more than 60. I don't care what it costs." Matthias's jaw was set like granite. "And when you bring it out, you tell her it's a Christmas Eve special. From the kitchen. You don't mention me." The waitress looked at the money in her hand. then at the family in the booth, then back at Matthias. Something shifted in her face. The hardness that came from too many double shifts softened just a fraction. "You got it, honey." Matthias returned to his booth. His brothers asked no questions. They knew that look. Road Captain had made a decision, and decisions were final. 15 minutes later, Dolores emerged from the kitchen, pushing a cart. The smell hit first. Roasted turkey, butter, the rich, warm scent of a real holiday meal. Plates covered the cart, heaping portions of everything Matthias had ordered, plus a basket of fresh rolls still steaming. The diner went silent again. Dolores wheeled the cart straight to Lana's booth and started unloading plates onto the table. 1, 2, 5, 7. The small table disappeared under the feast. Lana's mouth opened. No sound came out. Devin stared like he was seeing a miracle. Isaiah's eyes filled with tears. Jamie reached for a roll, and his mother caught his hand. "Wait, I didn't order this," Lana stammered. "There's been a mistake. I can't pay for." "No mistake, hon." Dolores smiled, and it was genuine. "It's our Christmas Eve special. Compliments of the house." "But I didn't." "Someone did." Lana's eyes darted around the diner, desperate and confused. "Who?" "I need to thank them. I need to." Dolores turned slightly and nodded toward the corner booth. Toward Matthias. Lana's gaze followed, and when their eyes met, every molecule of air left the diner. Matthias stood up, slowly, deliberately, and started walking toward her table. Lana's hands gripped the edge of the table. Her boys went rigid. The other diners held their breath. The white-bearded biker with the skull patches and the road-worn face crossed the diner like a man approaching a church altar. He stopped at the edge of their booth, looked down at the three boys with their wide, terrified eyes, then at Lana, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 50 years. "Mind if I sit down?" Lana couldn't breathe. The massive biker stood at the edge of her booth waiting, not threatening, not demanding, just waiting, like he had all the time in the world and understood she needed permission to speak. "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you do this?" Matthias's weathered face softened. He gestured to the empty space at the end of the booth. "May I?" Lana nodded, too stunned to do anything else. The big man slid into the booth with surprising grace, his leather cut creaking. Up close, Lana could see the lines carved deep into his face, not from cruelty, but from years of hard living and harder roads. His hands, scarred and tattooed, folded on the table. 50 years ago, Matthias began, his voice rough as gravel, but somehow gentle. "I was one of those little boys." Devin's head lifted. Isaiah stopped mid-bite. "Kansas City, December 1963. My mama worked 2 jobs, but it was never enough. 3 boys and a father who disappeared into a bottle and never came back." Matthias's eyes fixed on the divided plates, the carefully rationed food. "Christmas Eve, she took us to a diner just like this one. Told us we were celebrating." He paused, and Lana saw his jaw work like he was chewing on old pain. She ordered 1 plate of hash browns, split it 3 ways. Told us she'd already eaten. His eyes met Lana's, and in them she saw recognition, understanding. She hadn't. I knew it even then. I was 7 years old, and I knew my mama was lying because she loved us more than she loved herself. A tear rolled down Lana's cheek. I swore that night, if I ever got out, if I ever had enough, I'd never let another mother sit in a diner on Christmas Eve and pretend she wasn't starving. Matthias's voice cracked. I'd never let another little boy learn what sacrifice tastes like. Jamie, her baby, reached across the table and touched Matthias's scarred hand. The gesture broke something in the room. Behind Matthias, movement. The other 7 Hell's Angels stood from their booth. Not as a threat, as a unit, as brothers responding to an unspoken signal. They approached slowly, single file, each man carrying something. Wrapped packages, small boxes covered in bright paper with bows. Toy-sized gifts that looked almost comical in their rough hands. Crow, the younger biker, placed the first one on the table. Toy drive, he said simply. For kids who need him. Another biker, older with a gray ponytail, added 3 more packages. Merry Christmas, little brothers. One by one they came. 8 bikers. 16 gifts. Each man nodding to the boys, acknowledging Lana with respect that felt almost reverent. The table was covered now. Food and presents transforming what had been a moment of desperation into something that looked like hope. Isaiah's face crumpled. He started crying, the kind of tears that came from relief so powerful it hurt. Devin just stared, his 8-year-old mind trying to process that the scary men with the skulls on their jackets were making his mother cry happy tears. Jamie picked up one of the packages and looked at Matthias. Is this really for me? The big biker's eyes went wet. Yeah? So, that's really for you. Across the diner, the other patrons watched in stunned silence. Then someone started clapping. Slow at first. One pair of hands. Then another. Then the whole diner erupted in applause that rattled the windows and shook the dust from the ceiling. Matthias stood, his brothers falling into formation behind him. He looked down at Lana one last time. You're not alone, he said. And then the Hell's Angels turned toward the door. But before they could take a step, the diner door burst open. A police cruiser's lights painted the snow outside red and blue. And Sheriff Wade Morrison walked in with his hand on his gun. Sheriff Morrison's hand hovered over his holster for exactly 3 seconds. Then he saw the table, the food, the wrapped presents, the mother and 3 boys with tears streaming down their faces. The 8 bikers standing in formation, not aggressive, just protective. Dolores stepped forward. Wade, they just bought this family Christmas dinner. That's all. The sheriff's hand dropped. He looked at Matthias, recognition flickering. Stone. Sheriff. A long moment passed. Then Morrison nodded once and stepped aside, holding the door open. Matthias turned back to the table one last time. He reached into his cut and pulled out something small, a patch. Not the Hell's Angels' death head, but something else. A small embroidered eagle with the words protected by arched above it. He placed it gently in front of Lana. You sew this anywhere, on a backpack, a jacket, doesn't matter. And every angel from here to Portland knows your family. His voice was quiet but iron solid. Anyone gives you trouble, you call this number. He slid a business card across the table. Day or night? We answer. Lana's hand closed around the patch, trembling. Why? She whispered again. Because nobody should be alone on Christmas. Matthias looked at the 3 boys. And because these little men deserve to know there are still good people in the world. He straightened, nodded to his brothers, and they walked out into the snow. 8 Harleys roared to life in perfect unison. Not a threat, but a promise. The sound echoed off the buildings like thunder, and then they were gone. Red taillights disappearing into the Oregon night. Inside Betty's all-night diner, Lana sat surrounded by a feast that would have taken 3 months of her budget. Devin was already unwrapping a remote control car. Isaiah held a football like it was made of gold. Jamie had a teddy bear pressed to his chest. The crumpled $20 bill still sat on the table, but it didn't matter anymore. Her boys were full. They were smiling. They were safe. And somewhere in the snow-covered darkness, 8 bikers rode on, carrying the weight of their own childhoods a little lighter. Because family isn't always born. Sometimes it walks through a diner door when you need it most. If you believe that compassion has no dress code and that the most unlikely people can carry the biggest hearts, then like and share this story. Subscribe now for more stories. Also check out the 2 videos showing on the screen right now, specially crafted for you.